Now, first, we must deal with the lack of water, because that's where we start with chapter 17. The people have a lack of water, and that's a lot of people. So the people start to what? Complain. They complain to God. They complain to Moses again. And so Moses goes to God and asks, okay, what are we supposed to do? Move down to verse 6, we read this. Behold, I will stand before you there on the rock at Horeb, and you shall strike the rock, and water shall come out of it, and the people will drink. And Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. Now, I don't know about you, but that's a really interesting verse. I want to draw your attention precisely to what God told Moses to do in this rocky area. He tells him to go and stand at a rock. So it reads, behold, I will stand before you there on the rock at Horeb. Now, think about this. The whole area, you're on top of a mountain here. It's a granite mountain. Everything here is rocks. There's rocks all over the place. And they're told that God tells Moses, I'm going to stand before you at this rock. So over here on the mountain, go stand by the rock. Don't you find that interesting? I almost find it humorous in a way. What this means is there has to be something very special about one of the rocks on top of Mount Horeb. Let me put it to you this way. Say, for instance, like where I used to live for the last 20-something years up in the Northwoods of Wisconsin, deep, dense forests all around. Red pines, white pines, balsams, poplars, birch trees. We had all sorts of stuff. Trees everywhere, so thick. Matter of fact, where my house was, you could look out any window in my house and all you could see was trees. That's all it was, because I lived deep in the forest. Now, just imagine for a minute, if you were going to come up and visit me when I lived at that house, and I said something like this to you, like you asked me, for instance, where do you want to meet? And I say this, I'll meet you at the tree in the forest. Would that help much? I mean, the whole forest is there. There's trees everywhere. But if I tell you go meet at the tree, we'll meet at the tree in the forest, that means there's probably some type of special tree that stands out from the others. Now, with that mindset, that's the same thing God is sort of telling Moses. Go stand on the rock at Horeb. The whole mountain is a rock. So there has to be something very special there that stands out among all of the other type of rocks and everything else in this mountain range. And there is. Look at the photo you're seeing now. You see the size of this massive granite rock? This is in the Mount Sinai range. Now remember, we talked about this once before. Mountains, just this name of a mountain in the Bible, is not necessarily one sole mountain peak. It can sometimes be a whole range. Mount Carmel, Mount Gilboa, they have different peaks, yet it's one range. So we have something like that occurring here. We have a whole range where Mount Sinai, Mount Horeb, and this range is. And the Israelites are where? They're camped down at the foot, in the flat plain at the bottom of these mountains. But there is this huge rock that you see jutting up several meters tall. And in this picture, you can actually see a few people in it. If you notice carefully, look where the arrows are pointing. You'll see a few people standing there to give you the size of this rock. There's nothing else like this anywhere around. So, no doubt, this is probably what God didn't go up and write his name on it. This is the rock. Moses didn't write, this is the rock. But judging from what we read in the Bible and what we see all around here, this really fits like a hand in a glove. Now, with the people complaining of no water, Moses ascends up to this mountain and God tells him what to do. And we read about this, of all places, we get a good description of this in the book of Psalms. Yes, the book of Psalms, chapter 78, verses 15 and 16 tells us what happens there in a really cool way. It reads, he splits rocks in the wilderness and gave them drink abundantly as from the deep. He made streams come out of the rocks and caused the waters to flow down like rivers. what we have is Moses taking his rod as God instructs him. He strikes the rock splits, and water comes out. That's what we have taking place here. Water flows. Yes, this is supernatural. You cannot explain this by any type of scientific means. It is just a miracle. Water comes flowing out of this rock. And I'm not talking just a little trinkle, just a small amount of water, like somebody turned on a faucet or something. Remember, you got hundreds of thousands of people down here at the bottom of this mountain, and they got animals and stuff with them, so they're very, very thirsty. You're going to need more than just a faucet. The water would have to come shooting out of this so fast, with such velocity and such power, to run down the mountain so that the people could have water to drink. Because remember, these people have not had any water. They're all thirsty. Water was needed. It was needed quickly so the people could drink. And the force of that water coming out of the rock splits the rock and cuts through the rock. And remember, this is granite. This is very hard, igneous rock, and it splits this rock. And for the amount of water to come out to feed the people over time, for a while here, for this to take, it's just not turning on and off. It's running for a long time. And for this to happen, and since it does not rain in this area very often, there should be some evidence of this. Well, I took the photo of this rock, actually a couple of photos of the rock and the land surface around it for several meters going down. And I showed this to a geologist friend of mine. Now, I did not tell him anything about this being from the Moses account, that this is Mount Sinai or anything. I just brought it up to this geologist friend of mine, and I showed him pictures. I said, could you do me a favor? I just want your input on something. I laid these pictures down in front of him, and I said, what can you tell me by looking at that rock? He was impressed with the rock. It's this thing, he had never seen this before, and he's like, wow, this is really something. And he's looking and studying. Very quickly, he says, I got to know what kind of rock this is. Do you know what type of rock it is? And I said, yes, that is actually granite. That's just really beautiful granite, so it's very hard. And he goes, okay. And as he studied this, and he studied the pattern below going out from this rock, he says, and the roundedness of where the rock is split, it is rounded around. He looks at this all carefully, and he says, well, there's no question about it. This is done by water erosion. And I said, oh, okay. That's what I thought. And he says, where is this? Do you know where this picture is taken from? I said, yeah, on top of a mountain in Saudi Arabia. And he was like, what? Yeah, then I told him what this was all about with the Exodus thing. He was absolutely speechless when he was looking at this. And he just studied these pictures so much. And he goes, this looks like water had to have formed this and ran down, even showing water erosion going down. He says, this is definitely water. I find that amazing.
Support the show. Become a donor at evidenceforfaith.org/give.